Okay. פעמים משיגו בציידה. פעמים משיגו אדם הרב הידי זה מגיע לירה. Sometimes a person gets an illumination and he reaches a fear of God. Vupanim shel which is an interesting concept. He says he calls it panim shel an angry face, which is a strange way of putting it. I guess it's a lower form of a yira. And then Vupanim Yodel Ava, when he gets through this illumination to a countenance, to love of God, Vupanim Sharotz, this the countenance of desire, a positive one. But there Yira Shieshlo, my Yira he develops when he confronts the Panim Shozam, when he confronts the angry face. He fixes the anger. Should be finished upon him in the countenance. In other words, in the relationship between him and Kosh Baruch Hu. It changes the ratzon. And then he comes to love. But if a person, instead of fixing the countenance of anger by fear of God, just pushes it away by by becoming frivolous, by becoming silly, and trying to just be lighthearted and not worry about it. Machshavas and other thoughts. He's not fixing it. And then he comes to the situation where Hashem's countenance is turned towards him in a negative way to destroy him. But nevertheless, it says, it says, I'm going to put my face against him to destroy him. It says panai. It says there's an inference here. Panai always means an opening of light. So, what do you mean? You're about to destroy this person, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does it mean you're opening light towards this person? Doesn't make any sense. So this is a principle which we've already discussed in Tzadok with the Bnei Dora Mabul. Kosh Baruch always opens a gate for tshuva. There's always a possibility. In other words, yes, you're about to be destroyed, but yes, Kosh Baruch gives the opportunity potentially to do tshuva first. Misoso, and a person's death, just for a person's death, a person sees the divine presence. Zeni panim shel zam. There's also a panim shel zam. So Tzadok is saying it's an oxymoron, a contradiction, a paradox in terms. It's panim, but it's shel zam. So he's saying, why is it called panim shel zam? Because there are always two possibilities. The panim can turn to zam, and the panim can turn to panim, which is a positive thing. So therefore, he's saying, use the zam properly, and it'll be a panim of which is positive, of ratzon. Use the zam, react to the zam inappropriately, and then remain zam and gets worse. So the panim has always the fundamental principle of Tzadok throughout Tzadok, many places, including when he speaks about the 3 weeks, which we're holding in now. So he says the 3 weeks is a time of great sensitivity. He says Shrem is a place of great sensitivity, and human beings who are human beings of great sensitivity as well. When they're sensitive, they can go in either direction. If they go far down, they go very far down. If they go up, they go very far up, very far up. So panim also is a situation where it can go either way. It could be a panim shozam, and it can be turned around. But of course, there's certain things you can't avoid. Like a person's time to die has come. It's time to die has come. But he can die out of tshuva. So it's not completely eradicating the zam because death is death. But if it's done out of tshuva, so then it's being done in a positive way, which obviously Chazal refer to as misas neshika, a death of kiss. In other words, where things goes in the best possible way. So the again, but it's always illumination when it comes to person. Because Baruch Hu looks at him, puts his face towards him, which means a revelation. Love and looks upon him. Because Baruch Hu's light, we see light. And then it says, interesting thing. It says by Moshe Rabbeinu when he was at Har Sinai, and he asked to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem said, "My panim will go away, and I'll leave, and I'll give you nachas." Literally means I will leave you. In other words, I'll let you out of the the cave in which I was holding you down, you can come out. But it means here that you'll have nachas. So there, it's interesting also because Baruch Hu's punim when Hashem says, panai lo yera'u. Because Baruch Hu says, if I showed you my full countenance at this point, you wouldn't be able to survive. It'll be too much for you. And that's what a person can see before his death, but not during his lifetime. So he says, any punim I show you now, by definition, he says, will have to be a punim of yira. I guess even for Moshe Rabbeinu, I guess the punim of Ava would have been too dangerous. I don't know why, but that's what he's saying. So therefore, punim shel yira, I don't want you to see. Maybe punim shel Ava would be too much revelation. I don't know exactly. Say panay elechu, meaning the zam will pass. Vanichosi lach. Yira because Yira is not considered to be a state of calm, so a state of hanocha. So therefore, Kosh Baruch says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you want to have a revelation? The revelations are revelations. You can't give you the highest revelation. Even the next level revelation, again, this way it's understand from Tzadok. I don't know if it's MS, but this way I understand from what he's saying here. Even the Panim Shel Zam, I don't want to show you because it's not going to be for your benefit. So therefore, if you want, I'm going to cause that Panim to go away. And whatever you see, it's a Risus Achorai. Obviously, the state which for Moshe Rabbeinu in this world is the highest state possible to see the back of a Kosh Baruch Hu, so to speak. But it means that a Kosh Baruch Hu is going to show Moshe Rabbeinu a state in which it's not going to be a state of Yira, it's not going to be a state of Ava, it's going to be something in between, which is something which is going to frighten and cause Moshe to be disconcerted. Not something which is going to cause Moshe Rabbeinu to die because he has this tremendous connection to Kosh Baruch Hu, which is Misnas Neshika, where as a result of the great awe, a person dies and connects to Kosh Baruch Hu with tremendous dveikus, something in between. And it's considered achorai relative to what could be panai, even though for us it'd be unbelievable, for Moshe Rabbeinu as well, it was an unbelievable revelation. But he's saying some element of Yira is involved in it. And I don't know exactly to what extent and why it has to be that way, but that, because Baruch says that's not naicha, that's not calm, that's not going to leave a person in a state where he's going to feel satisfied. So because Baruch says panaye lechu, panichosi lach. So obviously the lesson which comes from Tzadok is that a person always has to, if they feel a certain relationship with Baruch Hu, we should feel a relationship from the Kosh Baruch Hu. I know often I feel something like that, but if somebody feels a relationship with the Kosh Baruch Hu, so they should try and make sure to respond to it and use it and not just let it pass in a way which then can turn out to be negative. All right. Not the most inspiring episode we've seen so far, but I don't know if they're going to be the same level of inspiration for me personally. Maybe for you, yes. Tzaddik. In the days of one's youth, there's a lot of boiling over from desire. And then a person has a lot of sins going to come to the Yetzer. This is called the sins of youth. Now, says Tzadok, that's in a person's individual life, but it's also in a person in the life of the world as well. The earlier generations versus the later generations. And we'll kind of come to that in a minute. But I want to point out that, in our day and age, when people remain younger longer, because people are healthier than earlier generations, so then obviously the sins of the Chatos Nurim last longer as well. In other words, sins of Taiva, which once when you were 40 or 50 years old, so you were way past them. Now it's not like that anymore, because people live in longer lives and have taivas longer. And I think that something which Reb Tzadok would have expected that people would be able to overcome at some point, it doesn't work like that anymore. But that's really a side issue here, because Reb Tzadok is focusing on something else here. So he says, V'zaya b'dar Mabul. This is in the generation of the Mabul. The Yetzer person is Ra from his youth, and that is in the Dora Mabul, which is the earlier generations. There was a lot of sins of desire. But there's also a flip side of this, a positive side. The person can also acquire a lot of good. Mitzad Yetzer Tov, because the Yetzer Tov Cheshkos Divrei Torah, as a desire, the Yetzer Tov and the desire for the Divrei Torah. In other words, Tzadok principle again, which taps in the principle we spoke about in the previous piece, which is that everything which is bad also has a good. And if there's a lot of desire for bad, there can be a lot of desire for good. There's a taiva can work both ways. So therefore, there can be a taiva, a true great desire. Cheshek means like a romantic desire, l'divrei Torah. B'zayah Torah Midbar. There's a generation of Midbar, which is also in the earlier generations. Like it says about Torah Midbar, Zacharti loch chesed nu rayach. Remember the chesed. Chesed is to do with the midah of ava, which is the flip side, which is the midah of taiva. Love and desire are two sides, positive, negative, the same coin. So the generation of the Midbar is called the generation of chesed nu rayach. When Am Yisrael reached out with the desire for Kodesh Baruch Hu. Fame atzim osa nefashos, and they're the same souls. K'mosh kosav b'zor Pinchas reish tezayin sof aleph ayin sham. The same souls came back as a Gilgul. The same souls of Dor Mabul, the same souls of Dor Midbar. So there's tremendous drive. One generation is the drive for a taiva, and the other generation is the drive for Torah. Even in the Midbar, lots of times that generation, but they drive for taiva too, for desires, but there was a tremendous desire for Torah. Okay. Well, that's you're asking how does it work? That's what we just explained it. It was the same drive, which is a taiva, can be used for good and for bad, right? It's the taiva, which has the desire for a powerful connection to something. It can be a powerful connection to desires of the flesh, and can be desires of the soul, and one has a tremendous love for Torah as a result. It's like Ayin Sham Leiruyim Makabel Torah b'Mabul Ilu Zachu. They would have been merited being Makabel Torah in the generation of the flood had they had the schus, meaning had they refined themselves and reached that level which they could have been at. Nishmas Moshe Esasha, and he says in the Shema Moshe Rabbeinu also was there. The Chazal say where Moshe min Torah minayin, where we see Moshe for the first time in Torah, b'shagam hu basar, which is a pasuk by Dor Mabul. B'shagam is gematria Moshe. Beis Shimon, Beis Shin Gimel Mem. So the concept of Moshe and Torah was there, but misused during the generation of Mabul. The Torah Mashiach, and says of Tzaddik, when it's going to happen a third time, at the end of history. It says Dor Mashiach Gam Kein Pam Shlishi Osa Dor. Fascinating thing. The Dor Mashiach is the same generation in the third Gilgul. Besod Mashkosov, like it's in the secret that which says, Techadish Knesher Nu Reichi. In your old age, you're going to get a second childhood, like a eagle renews its youth. I don't know if eagle actually renews its youth. I don't know the biology of an eagle, but I think perhaps it's referring to kind of like the legend of a phoenix. Phoenix rises from the ashes and renews itself. So I don't know, maybe that's what it's referring to. But maybe an eagle itself, when it gets old, it renews itself. But in any event, there's we could usually talk about second childhood being a negative thing. Means when the person gets old, they get immature again. But here he is learning that, that there's going to be a chiddush, a rejuvenation of youth in the old age of the world, which is the time of Mashiach. So and then there'll be the absolute tikkun. Shebos birvuvia, they're going to come together. Chatas nurim v'chesed nurim. You're going to have, like our generation. Don't say our generation Mashiach. We don't know that for sure, right? Nobody can know that. Many generations have thought they're the generation of Mashiach, and it turned out they were wrong. They were not the generation of Mashiach. But if our generation of Mashiach, you can see the aspect of that, and the fact that there's tremendous desires for taiva in our day and age, tremendous breakdown of morality, and tremendous breakdown of sexual morality specifically. But at the same time, you see there's this extraordinary explosion of Torah and Torah learning, which probably never existed before in history of Klal Yisrael. Even at the height of Klal Yisrael's greatness in times of the second Beis Hamikdash, they probably did not have the amount of Torah being learned that you have today. It's unprecedented. So you have a tremendous amount of this, and always the new programs for Torah, constantly new programs, new medrash, new everything, all the time. It's a tremendous mixture of chatas nurim and chesed nurim, the sins and the kindness, the good and the bad. So at this end of time, the good will overcome the bad. It'll turn into good. When you see the rainbow with a illuminated face, Titzapi the regular Mashiach. You should anticipate the kind of Mashiach. Now, whatever that means, he says, Shakesh is osabris. The Keshes, the rainbow, is the sign of the covenant, Neged Onshei Chatas Nurim, which came to show that the Chatas Nurim of Dora Mabul was atoned for. That's why there's the rainbow, which happened after Dora Mabul, to show that this happened. Those sins have been fixed, at least enough for the world to continue to exist. You know, the Chazal also used the Keshes, the rainbow, as like not the rainbow, the bow itself. Not the rainbow, the bow of a bow and arrow. They use it as a metaphor for the sexual organ, and they for the aver, and that in fact is what the Darsha Basa about Tesha Beitan Kashto, which it says by Yosef HaTzaddik when he was able to restrain himself from sinning with the wife of Potiphar. So the keshes, the rainbow, is a tikkun for the keshes, for the bow and arrow, in the sense of the aver, of the temptation of sexuality, and Medorash Mashiach, and generation Mashiach, yeah, but I'm being hearing, will be illuminated. Boras Panim, with Hakosh Baruch Hu Panim, going back to the previous piece. Hashem Yisbarach Meir Name, then we'll have an Oras Panim to show, and this I guess is Oras Panim of Ava, to show Kisar Bonambazeh, that Avera has passed away, and Amikum Tzadikim, and everybody's a tzaddik. Now, how it's going to happen, I have no idea. The Tzadok's not explaining. Saying somehow there are going to be tremendous temptations, tremendous sins, and some of this is going to be a great illumination, which probably has to do with the amount of Torah being learned to such an incredible extent, and somehow this is going to bring about a situation of Amech Kulam Tzadikim. How, I don't know. But somehow this tikkun will happen with the tremendous desires being met with the tremendous Torah, a clash, and a fix. Okay? He says, Amech Kulam Tzadikim means that if there was no Shmiras HaBris till now, people would not be able to preserve themselves in the face of Taivas. Now, they're going to be able to preserve themselves in the face of tremendous desires. Now, I have to tell you, warning for the next time we learn, Tzadok Vav and Tzadok Zayin, Reb Tzadok is about to embark, and we can skip this if you want, but I'll leave it up to you, on a series of pieces on Shmiras HaBris, on preserving ourselves from the specific Yetzirah of Taiva and Arayos. And a final analysis, with all due respect to Reb Tzadok, who's one of my great teachers and role models, he was a chassid. He's a chassid. He's fixated on Hotzor Zel Batola and preventing Hotzor Zel Batola. Chassidim are very much concerned with that, much unlike the Misnagdim, who don't really pay much attention to it. It's the reality of the divide between the two. So Reb Tzadok is going to speak about several pieces. I don't know how many, but he does this occasionally in Tzidkas HaTzaddik. He goes into a whole series of discussions of Tzadok. I think it's just the next two in this case over here, Tzadok Vav and Tzadok Zayin. So we can decide either to do them or to skip them. You can take a preview of them and see what you think. I leave it up to you. Okay, but for today, we'll stop here, and I wish you a good week. Take care.